Ladies and gentlemen, he is the undisputed, undefeated, the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Hoorah! What is this? What is this, though? Is he cocking his fist? Is he going to explode all over his opponents? Hoorah! I'm John Rednum with my real honest thoughts on 1,000 days of Roman Reigns. Tomorrow belongs to... No, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. That's a deep cut. Not too many people are going to get it, and those that do are going to be saying, So yes, we're coming up on 1,000 days of Roman Reigns as the undisputed WWE Universal Heavyweight WWE Champion of the world, of the universe, all that jazz. And yeah, even though the 1,000 day celebration is coming up on SmackDown in just a couple days, I decided to do this at the request of a friend down south. Thank you, because actually this was quite fun to go back and research. I'm not going to go over every single TV match that he's had, because I'll go over a couple of the big ones. Because realistically, a lot of his appearances have been sporadic, especially in the ring, except for big events. And I get it. I'm going to do a little bit of history, like before the pandemic hit, and then throughout all that. But this was kind of fun to look back on, and I don't know how long Roman Reigns is going to hold the, undisputed Universal Heavyweight Championship. It's probably going to be till next WrestleMania, which means he's going to at least break one more, lengthy reign. And then Cody Rhodes will be anointed as the new guy, and everybody will love him. Everybody except people that see right through his goddamn shit. But that's another story for way down the road. I will say that some of the stuff with Roman Reigns is booking in the matches. It's been repetitive, the interference, the other stuff, the ref bumps. Him being a heel and him finally being given the ball to just run as a goddamn heel has been refreshing. This is the Roman Reigns we should have gotten a while ago. Even though he's very inspiring as far as overcoming leukemia twice. Some people don't even overcome it once. That was a big goddamn deal. And people had sympathy for him for a few weeks until WrestleMania 35, which is still going on in some alternate universe. But it's been quite the big goddamn deal because they've really invested a lot of time in Roman. And they are bound and determined to just keep feeding people to him, and damn it, you will cheer our anointed guy. No, I won't. But he was last pinned by Baron Corbin at the 2019 TLC event. No, really. That was when he was King Corbin. Remember that? Remember that bullshit? And then the dog food thing. Rats. Almost had him eating dog food. That was actually a bit mind-blowing. And considering we're coming up on, or actually about 3.5 years since that happened, that's a big goddamn deal. And then he would continue to feud with Corbin into the early part of 2020. He beat him at the 2020 Royal Rumble. He pinned Corbin at Super Showdown 2020, which was the last Saudi show before the pandemic hit, for about 1.5 years. And then they were building it up on TV. I don't believe he was at Elimination Chamber, if I recall correct. Some of these events, and I'm sorry, to think that Elimination Chamber 2020 in early March was the last event that I ended up reviewing with my best friend Chris, aka the Terminator, before the world shut down, and he is doing great things in his life. Chris, if you are watching this, I hope you're well, my friend. But that's a bit hard to believe that it's been over 3 years. But they were building up for him to face Goldberg. Goldberg had beaten The Fiend at Super Showdown. Roman Reigns was going to face him. Spear versus Spear. And then the world shut down. And then they were doing the sterilized, no fans in the venue. Doing it at the PC. The smallest WrestleMania crowd ever, still a louder crowd than you would get at some events that went on for about 18 years. But in all seriousness, he was supposed to face Goldberg. Didn't face Goldberg. Took time off because of his health, because of the fact Vince McMahon wasn't taking the whole thing seriously. Big shock. Vince McMahon no-sold the U.S. government, no-sold a whole bunch of stuff. Of course, he's going to try to no-sell a goddamn illness. An airborne illness that was very, very real, by the way. And also, he had children to think about. He had just gotten over a bout of leukemia that was very legit, despite what Dave Meltzer fucking said. That goddamn moron, and various other people that debated it. Roman Reigns decided to take time off. And didn't appear back on television for months. and then showed back up, and they were still in the award-winning WWE Thunderdome. They decided to get out of the PC, do the Thunderdome, and take the Amway Center, and a couple other venues, which, I mean, hey, they had the money, they had the budget, and also they had the screen and a dubbed-in crowd noise, which they have not used since going back out on the road. But he appeared back at SummerSlam 2020 when The Fiend and Braun Strowman did the whole Universal title deal, and it was stupid. And then Roman showed up and had fancy new white teeth. What an eccentric performance. But he seemed healthier, seemed motivated. He had Paul Heyman in his corner. Cool. This was cool. This is the Roman Reigns, again, that we should have gotten years before. The fact that Vince McMahon did not want to relent on that one, to push him and make him suffer and succotash, which, yes, was December 2015? I'm trying to remember, because I know that they were doing, like, really, really bullshit things with him, even though he was, at times, getting some really good reactions, and they would give him just terrible things to say. So, Roman Reigns, finally, a heel, doing some good stuff, won the Universal Championship from Payback that was literally just shoved out there so he could win. And it was against Braun Strowman and The Fiend. I believe, if I recall correctly, again, some things are kind of blending together. But then they would start the whole thing of starting to bubble up with the bloodline. He would face Jey Uso, his cousin. That's where that one great shot came where Jey did the splash, 1, 2, and then Roman just nut shots. Kick it out. Boom! Ooh, oh. They the 2s and we the 1s. On a scale of 1 to 10, that pain was about an 11. See, because this goes up to 11. And then he also beat him at Hell in a Cell on the 25th of October. And that was where, they were doing stuff with Jimmy and Jay. They were building up where Roman was going to make his family fall in line. He faced Drew at Survivor Series, champ versus champ. Even though Drew had just won the title back from Randy Orton a bit ago, they should have kept it on him for that entire run, but I digress. He beat Drew at Survivor Series in a pretty good match. Still the award-winning WWE Thunderdome. We're deep into the pandemic here, folks. And then a TLC match against Kevin Owens. They would have interference and have all this stuff and whatever, and crazy spots and insanity. Then he would face Owens again in a last man standing match at the Royal Rumble. The only Royal Rumble, it's weird to think that from, I think it was just the Raw right after, it was a SmackDown right after Elimination Chamber that was in the Performance Center because everything got shut down. And from there to just after Hell in a Cell 2021, it was all that time they were in, the award-winning WWE Thunderdome. And this was the only Royal Rumble that took place during that whole thing. And it was wild. And Carlito even had, a bit of a return for that. It still blows my mind that Carlito his return to the company was in front of no people. And then he got a huge pop at Backlash. So the match against Kevin Owens and, the last man standing match at the Rumble was actually pretty good. And then we get where Daniel Bryan won the Elimination Chamber, and then all the beatdowns, all the stuff where he had to beat even Jey Uso, and all this stuff going on. And then Roman came out and said, "Oh, you wrestled for 35 minutes? Well, wrestle me now." And then Bryan gets him in the yes lock, but then eventually falls to the guillotine choke in like 95 seconds because he was beat up. Because even as great as Daniel Bryan is, they were going to book him to get beaten. And then we get the Fastlane, where he faces Bryan again. Edge is a special guest enforcer because Edge had won the Royal Rumble in 2021. So all this stuff's building from Roman. Payback, August 30th, 2020 is when he won the Universal Championship. So he's deep into this reign here at this point. We're about 7 months into this. And then from there, after Edge had done some bullshit and they had done interference and convoluted stuff and made the referees look foolish, then we get to WrestleMania 37, and that's night 2, where he faces Bryan and Edge in a triple threat. Bryan winning revenge, Edge basically gained his shot that he earned from winning the Royal Rumble 2021. Even though he was taken out for some of it, Because, let's be honest, as great as Edge looks, he can't really work a long match unless it's against Randy Orton in a cinematic stage bullshit match. Let's just move on from the criticisms and get back to WrestleMania 37, the first WWE show in front of any fans in just over a year. And Roman pins both of them, stacked, smashed them, and then got head at the table. And then he faced off against Daniel Bryan, title versus career. And it wasn't that Daniel Bryan was like, oh, he could go to Raw, or you get, well, that loser would leave SmackDown. No, loser leaves WWE. They were going to have him leave SmackDown, but it was his last contracted match. And then Daniel Bryan would leave and go to AEW a number of months later. He, even though I've had criticisms of that, little sidetrack, he made the right decision. He couldn't really do anything else in WWE. And then he took on Cesaro at Mania Backlash in a pretty good match overall. And then all this time, the Bloodline stuff is forming, stuff with the Usos. Solo is still some time away. Heyman doing the great promos. And then and basically he wasn't at Hell in a Cell. And then at Money in the Bank, the first premium live event in front of people. Well, basically, technically since Mania 37, but the first full-size crowd since the Raw just after Elimination Chamber. So it had been a while, and because I think they had the SmackDown and then the live SmackDown, then they had Money in the Bank in the same building, if I recall correctly. Big goddamn deal. He faced Edge. Run-ins galore. Rey and Dominic. Usos, all that stuff. And Edge lost, and then John Cena returned to Whoop-a-doo, and he got a big old goddamn pop. Then SummerSlam versus Cena, passing the torch, seemingly. It was pretty goddamn obvious that Cena at this point was on borrowed time. I mean, his match against Theory, and I'm just one little thing. His match against Theory, it's proof. Father Time's undefeated. I don't blame him for wanting to put some young talent over. I don't think Cena's going to wrestle again. He might wrestle at next year's WrestleMania, but he doesn't need to. He's done everything he can. So anyway, we're in full swing back with the crowds out of the award-winning WWE Thunderdome. It seemed to take a while to get used to crowds again. It was refreshing, and other companies have been doing full crowds. AEW got to jump on them just by a few weeks, maybe a month and a half. And then we get to Finn Balor at Extreme Rules. And the Demon. And the Demon music could do, and it makes him twitch and everything. Moving like, I don't know, like just, somebody that's being given electric shock therapy. That was really stupid. The Demon stuff isn't necessarily stupid because it looks cool. Even though it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but that was just dumb. And then he faced off against Bork at Crown Jewel. That's Brock Lesnar, by the way, for those that are new to the channel. And the Usos interfered. And this is before Brock was champion. All this time, Big E was the WWE champion. Bobby Lashley had beaten The Miz after The Miz had won the briefcase from Otis. Yes, Otis was the Money in the Bank briefcase carrier for a while. Yeah, he was definitely a carrier of bad booking and a carrier of stuff that probably he could have carried diseases I would have rather gotten than watch Otis be featured on television a lot. But nevertheless, Bobby Lashley beats The Miz. Bobby Lashley holds the championship for a while. Big E wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, cashes in on Bobby in September. So now he's the WWE champion. Bork challenges Roman at Crown Jewel. And from there, we get that where the Usos interfere and Bork gets pinned. And then he faces off against Big E. Roman does champ versus champ at Survivor Series. And then they didn't have anything from there to day one. They did have one NXT event, but whatever. He was off day one because he got COVID. Thankfully, he recovered. And the 5-way match, it was supposed to be, I think, a 4-way match. Big E was supposed to be in a 4-way match, and it was supposed to be Bork and Roman. And the idea was maybe they were going to switch the belt there. But then that happened, and Bork just went into the deal with, and made a 5-way and pinned Big E. So now Brock is the WWE champion. And then a match that a lot of people do remember, even with the dodgy finish. Seth doing the Shield entrance versus Roman Reigns. Royal Rumble 2022. That was a big goddamn deal. That was pretty cool. Him just trolling him, and Roman didn't beat him. He kept beating him down, and we got a DQ finish. People thought that was a little flat, and I do admit, yeah, maybe not the best finish, but it made sense that Roman was finally starting to crack, finally starting to get upset. And then he faced off against Goldberg, Roman did, again at Elimination Chamber. And the match that we didn't get until about a year, or almost 2 years later. And guess what? It was shit. Because Goldberg at this point is not very good. Even the producer must weigh in about Goldberg because he was not very impressed with what Goldberg did. You will come over here and you will say something about Bill Goldberg. You did not care for what Bill Goldberg provided in Saudi Arabia last year. You remember that. I had to give you chicken because you were not very happy about it. Hi. He was not very happy with Goldberg. Spear. Hi. So then, one thing that you didn't really like was they had a lengthy 2-night event. It was Brock against Roman Reigns, WrestleMania 38, unification match. Brock is WWE Champion. Roman is Universal Champion. He'd held for almost 2 years by this point. And they had, Roman got an injury, and they had Roman win anyway. Can you believe that? Well, you can because you saw it. Okay, fine. So anyway, yeah, they had the unification match. Brock lost. And so he lost the championship. He wasn't very happy by this point. And then Mania Backlash. It was a Bloodline versus Drew and RK Bro, which wasn't necessarily great. And then he took less dates from here on. Now I get it. Roman, big money, less dates, health, family. I don't blame him. The problem is they did a unification match, and now the two main championships are in one guy that's not appearing all that much, so they shot themselves in the foot like Plexico Burress. That's a dated reference. He did face off against Matt Riddle on SmackDown, and this was after Randy Orton had kind of suffered a back injury, and they weren't sure how long he was going to be out. Sammy got involved more and more after that bullshit that happened with Johnny Knoxville at WrestleMania 38. Still one of the worst matches that I have ever goddamn seen. It was an atrocity and a crime against wrestling, but there are people that liked it, and that's great. And then, so he's making less appearances. We're still getting premium live events. And then he faced off against Brock in a last man standing match for the WWE Championship. And then Brock got a tractor out there because Nashville, and lifted the goddamn ring. And then Brock still got beat. He got beat even though he brought a fucking tractor out. I mean, can you believe that? Can you believe he brought a tractor out? You can believe it because you were like, I could drive a tractor, and you could have driven a tractor. Or driven a tractor. But I don't know if you would have been able to do it as quick as Brock did. I don't think so. You wouldn't like Nashville anyway. It's too warm. But you did like the fact they did that. And then they just left the ring up. And I mean, boy, those people in the front row must have just loved that photography. They're getting all the shots under the ring and everything. Getting the shots of the undercarriage. You could be a little more enthusiastic considering that you're the one that wanted to chime in on this whole thing. And then, so basically, he faced it up against Brock. It was an entertaining match, even if it was overbooked. Big shock. Roman Reigns with the overbooked stuff. More Uso stuff, more Zayn stuff. Zayn was trying to prove himself more and more as time goes on. Clash at the Castle versus Drew. Solo Sikoa coming up from NXT and costing Drew the match in Cardiff. They really should have... If they hadn't unified the titles, it wouldn't have been so bad. Or if they just put it up for one of the championships. But just, god damn it. They killed Drew off. Nobody can take Drew seriously anymore. And then they left that part on the air where he sung with Tyson Fury. And that was really bad. That didn't look good at all. And then he faced off against Logan Paul at Crown Jewel. Yeah, it was a better match than some people expected. But it's still Logan fucking Paul, that piece of shit. And NFT, scam artist and that pig abandoning guy, and the fact that he's taken the wrestling aspect like a fucking fish to water. Still a piece of shit. So that match happens. And then more stuff with the bloodline and the fact that Sammy is having to prove himself. Well, Kevin Owens is trying to say, Sammy, they're going to turn on you. And he's saying this. And he's saying this over multiple weeks. I mean, during Survivor Series, afterwards, all this stuff. It's the bloodline, along with Sammy, versus the brutes, the bloody brutes. Drew McIntyre and Kevin Owens at War Games. And Sami Zayn ends up blowing his friend and kicking him and doing all this stuff. And he's finally been accepted. And then more and more shit goes on because you see at the end of that where Roman is just looking at Sammy. Like, we got what we needed out of you. And now we're going to kick you out. Because Sammy's still trying to do all this stuff with, talk to Jimmy and Jay and everything. Really try to get Jay to accept him, I believe. If I remember correctly. Yeah, because it was Jimmy. It was Jay that he tried to get to accept him. And then we build up more to Roman versus Kevin Owens. Again, at the Royal Rumble. They are destined to do this forever. And then it went a bit long. Okay, it went a lot long. Then they have the aftermath where Sammy wasn't going to hit Kevin. And then Roman just gets pissed at him. Finally, Sammy just snaps, hits the thing. Huge pop. Oh, the people didn't pop. Or the pop was piped in. I saw several videos that fans had posted from being in the arena. And unless everybody doctored their goddamn phones and pumped up the audio, dance, no, I think everybody popped pretty goddamn loud. It nearly popped the roof off of the goddamn stadium. I forget exactly where the Rumble was. Was it San Antonio? I think it was San Antonio. I'm not actually sure. But Sammy turns on Roman. And then builds up the whole thing where he's going to face off against Sammy in Montreal. He's going to beat him in front of his family and his friends and his wife and everything. And then he does, even though Sammy got a massive reaction. Sammy didn't win. But Kevin Owens helped save him. And then eventually, over the course of a few more weeks, they had, they reunited. And Sammy and Owens had beaten the Usos at Mania. And Roman beat Cody at Mania 39. And thus my Joker arc was born. That disingenuous, insincere motherfucker couldn't win. He couldn't finish his story. Well, the story's finished. Your dad had the charisma. You didn't. I don't actually hate Cody as a person, by the way. I just hate this idea that taking him out of AEW washes away all the same things that he's doing in WWE. That's just what I want to say. So, we got all that. And then, of course, at Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia very recently, Roman and Solo finally, teaming up. They're going to take down Owens and Zayn. And then we get more bullshit interference. And Jimmy super kicks Roman. And we get all that. And hey, that was pretty goddamn good. And now we are coming up on 1,000 days of Roman. I imagine we will probably get Jimmy versus Roman at Money in the Bank. Or we get Jimmy. Or we get Jay versus Roman. I mean, I'm not actually sure. Do not put the title on either Uso. They don't deserve it. They are not going to be good single stars. Just saying. You could have built up somebody else, but you didn't want to. Basically, they being WWE or you being WWE. But that's really all I have to say right there. 1,000 days of Roman, and quite a bit of it has been at least good. There have been parts that I have not liked, but I will give them credit for taking time with the storyline. Now, has it sacrificed a lot of the roster to the point that a lot of the roster doesn't mean anything, and even Cody doesn't mean much of anything? To some fans, sure. There are people that are still going to buy into Cody, and we'll see what happens. It could happen at SummerSlam. I don't think so. They'll probably have Roman against, unless Roman just wants to totally take time off and be done after the 1,000 days and getting to friggin' SummerSlam, which would be about 30 more days. Something like that. I think 30 more days from now. We'll see. But nevertheless, it's been quite the ride. Up and down, all around. Come on, defense work. Anyway, so agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rickland. The producer demanded that the door be opened. So now you can go. Okay? You are so mad at me. You are going to kill me the instant I'm done with this. All right. Anyway, yeah, here's the producer. Adopt, don't shop. Ooh, rah, meow. See you soon, guys.